Well, it's time now for business news, and France 24's Camille Knight joins me now on set. Hi, Camille.
Hi, Jenny.
So a legal showdown is shaping up between the Federal Reserve and Donald Trump after he said he was firing Governor Lisa Cook.
That's right. We heard from her attorney this Tuesday. He says Lisa Cook will be suing Trump over his actions, so the story is far from over, and it could even end up before the Supreme Court. It's, of course, the first time ever that a president has attempted to fire a governor, and it's sparking huge concern over the Fed's independence. In terms of short-term impact, we've seen investors fleeing to safe havens like gold, which has surged as a result of Trump's post. Treasury yields have also been climbing as bond investors grow anxious about the institution's stability, while the dollar has fallen. Now, as a quick reminder, Cook is being accused of mortgage fraud, but those allegations haven't been taken to court. She argues that she's being bullied to step down from her position after Trump and his allies have ramped up attacks as part of a campaign to pressure the Fed to lower interest rates. She was appointed by Biden in 2022, and her term was not set to expire until 2038, so more than a decade from now. More importantly, she's part of the committee that sets interest rates. That means that getting rid of her would allow Trump to secure an unofficial four-person majority on that committee. He said himself minutes ago that he already had someone in mind as a replacement that would allow him to push rates lower. This, of course, erodes the central bank's independence from politics and sidetracks it from its dual task of keeping down inflation and maintaining stability in the global financial system. So far, it hasn't seemed to rattle the markets too much as investors look beyond Trump's attempt to remove Cook. The Dow Jones trading around the flat line and the S&P and Nasdaq rising around 0.2%. Investors are mostly bracing for quarterly figures from Nvidia, the world's most valuable company, on Wednesday, that should help answer questions on whether artificial intelligence will deliver its promised returns. Looking at European markets now, stocks retreated on Tuesday. France's CAC 40 leading those losses, closing down nearly 2%. It comes after the decision by Prime Minister François Bayrou to call a confidence vote in his government sent markets into a tailspin. Bayrou is seeking political affirmation as he prepares to cut more than 40 billion euros in public spending in the country's next budget. But his position appears increasingly tenuous amid a flood of announcements from opposition parties that they intend to vote to topple the government on the 8th of September. Brian Quinn reports.
A political gamble that has investors cashing in their chips. French Prime Minister François Bayrou's call for a confidence vote, a vote he looks increasingly likely to lose, sent the French stock market into a nosedive on Monday afternoon, a slide that continued on Tuesday. Bayrou's finance minister, Éric Lombard, says he's in a battle to convince lawmakers not to bring down the government.
I don't want to do the politics of fear. We're not seeking an agreement just to avoid a financial crisis. We're seeking an agreement because the country needs a budget.
But fear is in the air. France's national debt stands at just over 3.25 trillion euros, nearly 114% of annual GDP. Its budget deficit last year was more than 168 billion euros, 5.8% of GDP. Both figures are nearly double the EU's limits, Lombard warning that if the current trajectory continues, France could see measures to address its debt imposed on it by the European Commission or the European Central Bank. Bond markets, meanwhile, are already imposing consequences. Monday saw France's 10-year rate rise to more than 3.5%, nearly 0.8% higher than Germany's. That rising borrowing cost means that France's annual interest payments alone are set to go from 60 billion euros this year to 107 billion before the end of the decade. After previous Prime Minister Michel Barnier was ousted in a no-confidence vote last December, France saw its credit rating downgraded, sending its borrowing costs above those of Greece for the first time ever. A new round of political chaos could see a repeat of that phenomenon, making the country's already troubled fiscal situation even more perilous.
The EU is defending its digital rules as a sovereign right after Donald Trump threatened fresh tariffs on countries that have regulations he claims unfairly target US tech firms. He didn't mention countries in particular, but his post on Truth Social targets measures like the EU's Digital Services Act or the UK's digital service tax. It comes just days after Trump and Brussels issued a statement to formalise their tariff truce. Let's hear from the European Commission spokesperson.
It is the sovereign right of the EU and its member states to regulate economic activities on our territory, which are consistent with our democratic values. And this is also why this was not part of our agreement with the US, our recent agreement with the US. So these are separate questions, and we will proceed with the implementation of the framework agreement, which does not, and rightly so, does not cover this question.
Trump may be hoping the EU and UK follow Canada's lead, which scrapped its own digital services tax to smooth trade negotiations back in June. Now, the UN Postal Agency says that 25 countries have decided to suspend package deliveries to the United States. That includes France, Germany, India and Australia, all of which are concerned about the abolishment of a tax exemption on small packages entering the US, which comes into force in the next 3 days. In a statement, the UN explained postal operators were suspending most of their shipments pending further information on how authorities will implement the measures. In France, there are some exceptions, though. Take a listen.
Since yesterday, people can only send parcels to the United States if the contents do not exceed a value of €80 or $100, and if it's addressed to an individual as a gift. So these are really very strict conditions.
So there you have it, cheap gifts only.
Cheap gifts only. Kemi Knight, thank you very much indeed for that business roundup, and thank you to our viewers for watching. More to come after a short break.